Awareness is aware, right here, right now. We all have had awareness reporting to a me sense, a me system, a me-ness that goes by a certain name where I get my address. I own such and such an automobile, and I will go get in it. I will drive home to Atlanta or Miami or whatever the case might be. And so it is normal, isn't it, for all of us to believe that there is a me sense. Who says my awareness, my body, my money, my experience, my friends? Well, all the while, awareness is just being aware. All the while, awareness is reporting. If you leave it alone, it reports amazing things. The belief system that we have grown to have and to lug around with us like a coat of arms I don't know what to call that. It's called ego, me sense, but it is a big piece of luggage. And it doesn't occur to anybody outside of religion or outside of metaphysics that one should understand what ego is and try to get rid of it or subdue it. Subdue it. Subdue it is enough. The purpose of the ancient mysteries was to subdue the testimony of the senses. Subdue them. The Greek mysteries, the Egyptian mysteries, those mysteries that we call early American Masonry. I have belonged to all of the mysteries that promised to give me an answer. I've tried them. They all say essentially the same. The purpose of the mysteries is to subdue the passion. Well, I guess what I want to say before we take a break is that miracles really, really happen. And they don't start happening until we discover that this awareness belongs not to a me, but to an ineffable presence. It's right here, right now. Awareness belongs to this ineffable presence that is right here, right now. Miracles start happening as we let go and give up the foolish notion, or not so foolish notion, because we all had it, and it's important that we have it for a while. But we give up the notion that awareness belongs to me, who has a mind of his own. Awareness doesn't belong to me, who has a mind of its own. It belongs to isness, to the presence, which is the onema in all existence. And this that seems to be a point of view will suddenly quit being a point of view to become points of view. And lo, miracles start happening. It is a tremendous conversion, is that the word I want? That takes place. And let me give you an analogy to use. The little dot in the center, if you will look at just a single dot there in the center and pretend that that is a pixel How many do not know what a pixel is? Well, let me tell you, when you turn on your television set, what you actually see on the television screen, a whole bunch of pixels of light. Pixel, a tiny, tiny little thing that if we could get it small enough, we would have it one photon wide. But a pixel is one little dot of light on your television set. Now, if you will imagine that up until this moment, up until you discovered that you wanted to know what it was all about, at the very moment you said, what is it that, why am I here? What is the purpose of life? From that moment, instead of mind being a pixel, it turns into the entire television screen. If you can imagine yourself a little pixel down in the lower left-hand corner of a big television screen, and everybody that goes to your church belongs pretty much there in the lower left-hand corner, same color, and you go over to one pixel having to fend for itself among a million pixels, having to make a living, having to worry about what was going to happen, not happen. All of a sudden you realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm not a pixel. The television screen is being me. All of a sudden, you're not that one pixel in the middle or in the lower left-hand corner having to compete with all the others. Lo and behold, you are the whole of all the pixels. You are the functioning. And what does awareness do? It's a functioning. Awareness is the functioning of mind, of God. Now, for a long time, we thought it was my own functioning. For a long time, we were like the tree that looked down at the shadow and couldn't help but notice that the shadow was all bunched up underneath, strong, virile. And then the shadow began moving across the ground. And it looked away and saw all these other shadows too. And they were all moving away. And then, lo and behold, the tree looks out and it sees its shadow stretched way out to the east because the sun is setting in the west. And the tree says, I am just about to die. And of course, we have seen the clouds come and cross the way, and lo and behold, pixels or trees were just stuffed out right there on the spot. Bam! No more shadow. Well, what science has done, to our great credit, is it has examined everything in the known universe, plus an awful lot in the unknown universe that it thinks exists. And science has examined everything. Everything. And if we keep looking at that shadow enough, what does it lead to? The shadow leads straight away to the tree itself. The tree isn't stuffed out when the light goes away. The tree that doesn't die when the shadow goes way out to the east in the evening. So, from this point on in the seminar, and you're going to talk from pretty much from now on, I would like to have everybody understand that awareness is what we walked into the room with, is what we will walk out with, is what we arrived on Earth in the space-time continuum looking at and listening to. We've never been outside that awareness to make certain that there's another one. This was called solipsistic foolishness. Mrs. Eddy and a preceding Mrs. Eddy by the transcendentalists of the early 19th century spoke of the fact that we couldn't get away from our own mind. And who is in charge of this mind? Well, for a long time we think it's us. And then we come to find out it's God. And we quit worrying about it. But for a while we think it's us. Now the transcendentalists have been trying to tell us this for a long time. When Mrs. Eddy, a lady, wrote about and put metaphysics in Western terms so it could be understood in the last part of the last century, the scientists all looked at it and said, this is a mumbo jumbo, don't bother us with this. Let the physicists, let the theologians look at it. Theologians looked at it and said, this is silly. Let philosophers look at it. So the philosophers looked at it, and they said, no, this must be a theology of some sort. It's silly. Whatever it is, it's silly. And it was labeled silly solipsism. I'm not sure Mrs. Eddy ever discovered this silly solipsism that we're talking about now. I think it has been around from the beginning. There have been those who have come to understand it, see it from the very beginning. And that one is us. In any event, silly solipsism has now reared its head for the scientists to figure out. Lo and behold, mind and what mind is aware of and the very act of awareness itself all seem to be the same. So from this point on, all of us here are going to be just awareness, awaring. We're going to let go of the me who says my awareness to be the divine awareness being. And you will see that miracles can happen to that one. Now, I want to say this quickly. Children do this. By dang. Children come into the world and they do this. They do this. Awareness, the child is aware. The child believes that the frog is the prince. And lo and behold, that's what it is as far as the child is concerned. And the child doesn't worry about what's for dinner or about that ski slope on the beach in New Zealand. I love that. The child just believes because it hasn't learned yet not to believe. And we can all do that again. Now, you think it's impossible to become like a child? I tell you, it isn't. Under the most dreadful circumstances, one can become like a child again. When you can't even move the body, you can still think like the child and bring to mind anything and everything. The child was tended by its parents, human parents. Mother's Day. What a wonderful day. But my mother is here. So is yours. Because where mother exists, only place mother could ever exist, within awareness. Where did mother go? Where did Ruby go? Nowhere. We always say here, and we always say now. And it's always here and now to the little boy and to the little girl. And you notice how the little boy can ask for anything, and it's there. I asked for a bicycle. I know that my folks couldn't afford a bicycle, but it was there. Well, if your human mother and father would do anything for you, how much more will this presence that is right here, right now, and it's here, right here, right now, how much more will this presence do for us? It will give us anything that is necessary. All that we could ever want. Even scarlet ribbon for our hair. People said, give me peace, equanimity, tranquility, joy. It was exactly the same 2,000 years ago, and it was the same 4,000 years ago. Give me peace. Well, the time for this idea has come again. There isn't a doctor in this room who doesn't know that when he has a patient who believes in him, that he can do much more for that patient than for the one who didn't believe. There isn't a practitioner in this room who doesn't know that when somebody believes in you, that you've got the pizzazz, or that you can do it, that you can help them, that it is much easier to help that one. So, what we believe is very important. It's that luggage we carry around. Now, if I make a statement, A, B, C, what we hear is A, B, C through our belief system. We don't necessarily hear A, B, C. We are so accustomed to the belief system that we lug around with us, that we listen to everything through that belief system. We become very proud of our Harvard education, of our number of years that we have studied this or that or something else. We are very proud of our adversities and our the wars that we fought. It's all part of the belief system that we carry around. So when I say ABC, everybody is still listening through the belief system. It comes to them as a brand new idea to just listen and hear the ABCs. And don't take your belief system to it. And people say, well, how do we do that? How in the world do we do that? Because as a little boy, I leaned against that hot stove and it burned. And so now I know not to lean against a hot stove. So how is it possible not to take the belief system along? And all the belief system are the many years of experience that we've had, having traveled many wrong paths, listened to many false prophets in order to know the real one. In fact, all of our lives, what we have done really is we sound a note. When we tell somebody something, we sound a note. The person we are talking to is listening through their belief system, which is anger or animosity or pride or arrogance or whatever it might be. And they listen through that belief system. So what they hear, not what we said, but they hear an overtone. Because two tones make an overtone. And what they hear is the overtone. Now, I learned by accident 30 years ago when I wrote my first book. It was a book that had overtones in it. And that people, I wrote what I thought. I wrote what I had lived. I wrote out from the standpoint of having done that and proven it. Consequently, there was no bull tails in it. I was telling it as straight as I could, as honestly as I could. And yet other people would bring their overtone, their tones to it, and they would hear quite something else. So by the time I wrote the final book, which is about the child, I learned how to teach with overtone. And let me explain what that is, if I may. I tell a story like a Sufi, like an old Sufi, or like one of the ancient Indian medicine men. I tell a story, and you listen to it. You listen. I tell the same stories over and over because, to be honest, that's all I can do is tell what I have lived. I learned as I gave lectures that I could reverse some of those stories and tell them in a different order, and I would get an entirely different reaction. Sometimes people would double up the knot, and I would see their pain immediately, and I would talk directly to that one so that I could address that pain and anguish. I learned to tell my stories so the overtone would instruct. Now, let me tell you how that works. All of you do it. This isn't new. Everyone uses overtones, especially children, and especially old people who are children. But if I tell a story and you carry your baggage with you and listen to that story, and then I tell another story and you carry the same baggage with you and listen to that story, it's like I had hit 2 notes on the piano. One here and one here. But there's another note that is sounded that I never said with my mouth. And that's the overtone. And that's where the instruction is. And that's why overtones are going on here and now. And it doesn't make any difference what I say. It lies in the listening, which is out there with you. It lies with the awareness that is doing the listening. So I wrote the book called The Child Within Us Lives. Wasn't completely honest with that book because I didn't talk about some of the things that I thought I should not talk about. But I'm willing to now. And I wrote 12 chapters, which I used to call the Bohm. And those bones are the same that you will find in any life story anywhere in the world, because we all come into this world and commence what appears to be a period of linear time. And then we are disenchanted. Then we fight the battle of the world. And then we grow older and sicker and tired of it all. And then we want to give up. And if we are lucky, somewhere along the line, we rediscover the child. It hasn't gone anywhere, but it has been there all the while, leading us by the hand, hoping to get us through every trouble, every trial, every tribulation. Now, some people call this child the soul. Be my guest. Call it whatever is good to you. Call it the original imprint. Call it the divine imprint. Call it spirit. I don't care. But it is the original child of ours. And it's here. Right now, full-fledged, shaken together and running over. And it wants us to get through this time of trial and tribulation. And it wants us to get through with grace and dignity. And it wants us to reign. And we will, each one of us, make it. Every butterfly comes out of that cocoon that seems to restrain it and restrict it. We will all rediscover the child because the child is real and the child is here. Now, to the psychologists among us, I understand there are quite a few. I'm not talking about the wounded child. There is a child that's wounded, that's told that Christmas isn't real. that Santa Claus is a myth. What a terrible thing for a child to hear. I'm not talking about the wounded child. I'm talking about the original imprint, the divine of us, the child we were from the beginning, the child made in the image and likeness of God. That child is still here, ripping and roaring and holding our hand, no matter how tough it gets. That child, like the photon, is everywhere present and nowhere absent. That child is all over the mountain at the same time. Just like the photons in this room are all over this room. And they're all over the world. As a matter of fact, the light that is coming through the skylights is bringing information to us right here, right now, infinitely more than the words coming out of my mouth. The photons are telling us what's on the other side of the mountain. What's on the other side of that mountain? The photons in this room are bouncing around and telling us what's in Herzegovina and what's going to happen. The child of us has been all over Dashan. Dashan means big mountain in Chinese. I was telling you about the book I wrote about the child. I divided it into 12 chapters. And then there is a big section at the tail end of that book, which are those 12 chapters repeated, except to infinity. If you were to run that through a computer, you would get circles within circles, wheels within wheels within wheels. And the way that book is best read is you read a chapter up front, then you read anywhere you want to, anywhere strikes you to read, and the back of the book. And it was geared, the book was geared to make overtones, to sound two notes, two sounds. The instruction in that book is in its overtone and not in its words. I tried very hard to have the words be reasonable and logical, because I know that that is expected by the academe, by those who know, by those who've been around, by those who study, go to school. It must be reasonable and logical. You see, that is part of our Greek heritage. But Jesus, thank goodness, and Lao Tzu, thank goodness, preceded Greek reason and logic. Consequently, what they had to say is read and understood outside the boundary of reason and logic. That was why the book, the Gospel, according to Thomas, when it was rediscovered, bear in mind all the book, the Gospel, according to Thomas, really is a collection of sayings. I think 126 sayings, something like that. Sayings attributed to the man called Jesus. That book was called one of the heresies in the 2nd century, and it was doomed to be destroyed. But that which is hidden is going to be revealed. And that which is covered is going to be uncovered. So in 1946, that particular book was found again. the Gospel according to Thomas, which is nothing but 26 sayings by the man, Jesus, by people who loved him and who attended his talks wherever. And they wrote down, Jesus said, and they tried to remember it. Now, because the Bible came up in here among these questions. The Bible is a great book. It's surely a holy book, as books go. Holy meaning whole or one. But I must say this so that you don't construe me to be anti-Bible or anti-holy book. Remember that anything that is out there appeared within awareness. And the authority lies within awareness. You remember that the man, Jesus himself, said the kingdom of heaven is within. It is without. Now, no Bible had been written at that time. So I would remind everyone to be respectful of the Bible and all holy books, but to remember that the authority lies within awareness. And it's not out there with the book, that book, or any other book. It's not out there with this man, that man, or any man by any name. Now, Jesus and Lao Tzu and Buddha and all the lights that I could mention have all said the same thing, that the kingdom of heaven is within. It isn't out there with some leader. It isn't out there with an authority. It isn't out there with a law. It is in the heart. It is within. So those of you who elect ever to read The Child Within Us Lives, remember that the back part of it is to be read just any way you want to, at random. And it will sound an overtone with something that is in the first 12 chapters, somewhere. 12 is a word that has great significance with symbologists and numerologists, and people who dabble in the arcane and the occult, 12 being complete. We have 12 months in the year. There are 12 chapters in the front of that book about the child. Then I don't know how many chapters make up the back. But it is to be read. And remember, your overtone is your own. Remember that your overtone nobody else can speak for. But you. You're the only one. It's your overtone. It's immaculate. And you are the authority therein. So, the instruction in that book lies in the overtones, and also in this talk that I'm trying very hard to do here. The real instruction is in your listening, and definitely not in my speaking. Now, before I was struck by the board of whatever I was struck with, I read Scarlet Ribbons to Rachel, these very words, and I got hit in the head. Bam! Rachel said, "You're not supposed to have that kind of illumination. You're not supposed to be illuminated like that." But before this, I had called. I wanted to make sure that there was no bullshit in this talk. If you people are turned off by my language, remember that Arjuna was a soldier too. And I just am a latter-day Arjuna. I was an infantry soldier in 2 wars. I did my homework before I could, and I called a man about photons because I wanted to make sure that I had all the latest poop. I didn't want to say anything about the photons that I wasn't supposed to say. I had a question for him, as there are questions in here. Not many, but some. My question for this man who was the authority on photons in the state of Alabama, and perhaps the Southeast, my question was, does the photon run down? Everything else that's physical seems to run down. The law of entropy. The universe began with a big bang and it's supposed to be cooling off. And eventually the star, the sun, will flare in its dying gasp and so forth. Entropy, cooling off. This man says no. As far as we know, there is no entropy with the photon, but he says you must be very careful talking about the photon because there are 2 schools of thought. Isn't that interesting? 2 schools of thought. You have to be careful talking about photon because the one school of thought will not abide by the other school of thought. I discovered this when I went to Colorado to visit Sandy, sweet Sandy, and stayed at the Enchanted Cottage. I discovered that I went and asked about David Bohm coming to Aspen because Aspen has a study for theoretical and applied physics. And they should know about Dr. Bohm. But I was inordinately put in my place by the lady that I talked to because that school of thought didn't go along with the David Bohm school of thought. One believed one thing about the photon and the other believed another thing about the photon. Now, does this sound familiar in religion? There is a school of thought about what is it, God, omnipresent being, presence. There is another school of thought, the principle, life, truth, love, spirit, not material at all. So I found out in Aspen that I didn't dare talk about one line of physical being because the physicists didn't agree. Now, the question is asked, how quickly can one do this? Put off the old man and put on the new. How quickly can it be done? Well, it can't be done quickly, but it can be done. Answer that question. I used to think there was no old man to put down. There's just God. And God is good. So how can there be an evil old man to put down? But then, by the time the day was over, I had to go to the bathroom. And the next morning, I had to eat. So it seemed like that old man was still around. But we can get rid of the me who says my awareness. We can subdue that one and let awareness be freely aware. Again, about how quickly. A lady called not too long ago, and she said that all the masters in India were dying. They all had something that's causing them to die. Was there ever a time when awareness is not aware of good and evil? Well, I don't know of any time that I cannot be equally aware of what is not present. At the same time, I am aware of what is present. Now, that sounds like metaphysical hoi polloi, but it isn't. If we look outside the window, we can see lots of trees out there. And just outside the door is a tupelo, a white maple. It has a bluebird house in it. That white maple grows to be the tallest tree in the eastern United States. If in a wooded situation, it can grow 200 feet high. We have one in our backyard that isn't that high, but if it ever falls down, it's going to crunch a wood saw. The minute I look at a tree and say it is a maple tree, at the same time I know it is not all the other trees. So the is-nots are the means by which I perceive what is. So with knowing what is a fact, we also know what isn't. We look at our circle again, we see allness, the big circle. Awareness, that is, isness. Call it whatever you like. Call it God, call it totality. You will notice a little dot in the middle is awareness. And then you will notice another circle, itself. Mind aware of itself. Mind aware of what awareness is, mind aware of what the mind is. Mind also aware of what is not and could never be, but seems very real, as long as we believe it. All that is going on is isness aware of itself. We are that awareness. We are the verb of that combination. We are awaring happening. God aware of itself. We are what is active. Why is life living? To be aware of itself. The human scene appears to be equally fraught with is not. By the way, is awareness gendered? One of the questions here. Is awareness gendered? No. Awareness is not gendered. Awareness includes within itself all there is to male and female. Awareness, we identify as awareness. We have immediately stopped identifying as gendered being. I am a man. It is my place to do thus and such. I am a woman. I am supposed to do thus and such. We identify as awareness, which includes them both. And boy, what a weight off your back when all of a sudden you can say and know what you're saying and know you know it. That awareness is all there is to both them. Isn't it? Isn't it? Right now? Now that doesn't mean that you get up and walk to the wrong restroom. You better go to the right one. You know, the immediate body that you look down at. You better abide by its rules in this world. But to identify as awareness is to identify as all there is to all gender. Now, one other thing. Is the church within awareness, or is awareness in the church? People are always saying to me, since I come from the Bible Belt, the buckle of the Bible Belt, the buckle of the Bible Belt, the little hole that the thing sticks there, part of the Bible. What church do you belong to? And what a surprise it comes when I say, because it's the truth, all churches belong to me. All churches belong to me. Why? I identify as awareness, not as one who belongs to this church or somebody else's. Every church has its place within awareness. And I've stopped arguing with them. They have not stopped arguing with me, but I have stopped arguing with them. I do not care whether you are baptized or dunked or sprinkled. I think it's wonderful to be baptized and dunked and sprinkled. We are awareness, the functioning of the ineffable, which is present in this moment, as arithmetic is, as music is. You know, Pythagoras was quite a guy. I'm surprised I remembered that name. Pythagoras was a Greek philosopher who said everything is arithmetic. Everything is arithmetic. I didn't say everything is arithmetic. And Einstein said that too. Something like 4,000 years later, about that number of years later, said everything is arithmetic. We now have quantum mechanics on the scene saying everything is arithmetic. Everything, it can happen in the framework of an unreasonable, illogical something. We don't know what to call that something, so we will, for the time being, call it whatever. Holographic. A book was written about a hologram. Do anybody here not know what a holograph is? Well, a holograph is just an image of an image. If we look at a holograph, it seems like we can see through it. We can see its right side and its left side. But it is an image of an image. Now we have quantum mechanics saying that everything we see, including our physical body, including the chair we sit on, including the pants we put on this morning, the 4 pairs I put on this morning, is an image of something. They don't know whether to spell that something with a capital S or a little s. I choose to call it something with a capital S, for which I am the awareness, for which I am at the moment, a point of view, trying to articulate when I can't, a point of view, a line of thought, a plane of thinking. All of you who are not mathematicians, please raise your hand. Good God. I'm glad. You all notice that we have a 3-dimensional space-time continuum in which we speak of a point as having no space. A point is a point, it occupies no space. Well, let's get back to the little photon that is winging around the room. It does not occupy any space either. It has no mass. Photon has no mass. You will notice then that we say that an infinity of points and infinity of points makes a line. A line is a point of thought carried to infinity. If you take a line of thought and carry that to infinity, you have a plane. You will notice that each dimension moves away from the other dimension at 90 degrees. So space-time is a movement of 90 degrees away from length, width, and breadth. And I think that that's as much as you have to know about quantum mechanics to be a quantum physicist, is that each dimension beyond space-time, 4-dimensional, is a 90-degree move away. Now, when all of us here close our eyes and think about Mount Everest, if you will do that just for a minute, you think about Mount Everest. You can see it. You can open your eyes if you like. During the time that you thought about Mount Everest, you saw it. If you were practiced a little bit, you can smell the cold air and you can feel it as well. You can touch it. You can smell the glaciers. You can smell the grass. You took, in that moment when you closed your eyes, a 90-degree turn away from the 4th dimension into the 5th dimension. How long does it take for mind to be aware of itself? Well, this is summed up in all of the holy books, all of them, especially in the Bible, as a single word called eternity. So God is eternally plumbing the depth of His infinite qualities and attributes. qualities, I can't say that, and attributes. Someone says, if I could have anything on earth, I would like to have a healing. Well, okay, stop and think just a minute. I would like to have the ability to speak the way I could a short while ago. I would like to be able to run like the wind, catch falling leaves like I used to. I would like to not have cataracts, all those things. But what do we mean when we say we would like to have a healing? The question can be asked, what does awareness need? Awareness doesn't need anything. Awareness is constantly, continually being aware. Of what? Of the qualities and attributes of life, of being, of essence. When we fall asleep at night, we often don't dream about the illness that we went to sleep with. And we dream all kinds of wonderful things. You'll notice there's no illness there. When we awaken in the morning, we do not have to bring yesterday with us. Science is discovering this. I would ask those of you who are not familiar with Chopra? Thank you. Would you say that? Where are we going? Chopra. Chopra. I would like, since he says it very elegantly and flowingly, about belief systems and about when we go to sleep at night, we are not the same one who awakens in the morning. That we think on the average of 90,000 thoughts a day, but 85,000 of them are the same thoughts that we thought yesterday. So we rebuild our old belief system during the course of waking up in the morning, getting dressed, but we don't have to. So what is a healing? You know, every 6 weeks, you have a whole new nervous system. Every 6 weeks, you have a whole new stomach and stomach lining. Every year, you have a whole new physical body. It can be the way you want it to be. Please listen to the Chopra tapes about belief system and know that at this moment, physical science is examining and exploring belief systems and finding out that we can be whatever we want to be. And that's a living truth. And that is really miraculous. That's not just a hint at miracles. That's like waking up and finding scarlet ribbon. Except we know where they come from. We get what we believe. We get what we anticipate and expect. Even if we anticipate and expect the wrong thing. We get it. Anyway, we get what we believe. Now, this has been my experience. This will conclude my part of it. I started out believing everything I saw. And behold, the world was very good. And I loved it. And then I was disillusioned. And then I began to believe that how much money I made was important, and how many schools I could attend was very important. And I believed all that up the hilt, to the eyeballs, and it didn't satisfy me, nor was it long profitable. Then somewhere along the line, I discovered that every time I had a glimpse of the truth, and it's been happening regularly right here in this group, I began to notice that whenever I had the little glimpse, that no time had elapsed since my last glimpse. No time had elapsed. I took note. I began to notice, as I would have another glimpse, that it was related to some previous glimpse in some way, and there was no time involved. It seemed only yesterday that I was thinking about that, and lo and behold, so I found that in more than one direction there was neither time nor space, but glimpses and glimmers too. I began to notice that when people's eyes lit up in understanding, that there was no time between the last time I had seen that person light up. And when I would talk to that person about time, I would get some of the strangest, most wonderful answers. And their experience was the same as mine, that time is quite relative. It's not cut in concrete. And just because we were born in 19 whatever doesn't mean that we're that old now. I would like to conclude, and then you people can ask questions. I want to conclude with a poem about humility. And it was written by a Confederate soldier. And that's all that I know. I wish I knew who, so I could say who it was. All I know is this is a soldier's poem. And he wrote it after the Civil War. And he entitled the poem Humility. Did I say that all right? Humility. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for help that I might do great things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing I asked for, but everything I hoped for. Despite myself, my prayers answered. I am above all men, most richly blessed. And that's how I feel about you folks. Thank you for coming all this distance to hear me. And we will be together as much as you want to be today and tomorrow. And I will answer every question I can. Good morning. And it is a good morning. And why not? This awareness that is aware right here belongs to God. So it's a good day. Awareness every morning wakes up and says, hello world, what good will I see today? And since God really is all in all, truth is all in all, what is there to see except God? Good. There was a big collective question yesterday at the end of the session, which I will answer. In the Army, I had a sergeant who managed always to keep his men alive. He was the best sergeant I had ever seen. And I wondered about his instruction. How could he say it so well? And I asked him his secret. And he says, well, sir, first I tell him what I'm going to tell him. Then I tell him. Then I tell him what I done told him. And then I test them. And if they don't have it right, I hit myself flat side the head and start all over and do it again. So, I started yesterday at the beginning, which is awareness. We awaken in the morning, divinely aware. We say, hello, world. The collective question that I had at the end of the day was, why should I do all this? I mean, why give up the old man? Why put on the new? Why give up the old sense of identity and take on a new sense of identity? Line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. We can't do it quickly, you know. It takes practice. It takes discipline. And here in this country, if we are missing anything at all, we are missing discipline. But it can be done. We can do it. We can be just awareness, awaring. And in the process, we are very well taken care of. Who is being aware? Isness, awareness, truth, whatever you want to call it, is aware of itself. Collective question yesterday, why should I do such a silly thing? Why should I let go my Harvard training and my many years of doing it this way or that way, being Dr. Big somebody as opposed to somebody else? Why should I give all that up? Well, I used another analogy. I'm going to try, Rachel. If everybody will envision this as a television set. Television set. And right down here is a pixel. And that is the way we come into the world identifying ourselves. Not quickly, but surely, sooner or later, we are a pixel. One among many. 4 billion of them in the world, and I have to make my living out among those 4 billion. I have to talk this way or that way. I have to pay my bills. I am only one pixel among 1 billion, 4 billion pixels. I was born in the western United States and or the eastern part of the world, but I am only one pixel among many. What happens now when we come as children again? We quit thinking as the pixel, who, by the way, belongs to a certain church or a certain metaphysical group. I haven't. Close enough. Am I doing all right? Close. All right. We quit identifying as this one pixel, and bit by bit, line upon line, we are identifying as the whole screen of awareness, the whole functioning screen, television screen. Not just a pixel, but we are the whole screen. That doesn't mean, of course, that this body changes, except it gets younger, and it does things that you would never believe. It survives. It gets a better job. It starts doing things that it dreamed it would like to do and doesn't. Right, Bill? Right, Tom? And we still get our mail right here. We still have to eat every morning, and we still brush our teeth, but we don't think in terms of the pixel, male pixel or female pixel. We think in terms of being the awareness, the entire awareness of the whole television screen. Now, we started out by saying, this is my mind, my life, my 100 million whatever, or $10, my human experience. And we become ungendered awareness, aware that everything is included within this awareness. That the joy of the red center is my joy. Because where do I see the red center? Bounding and leaping and playing, but within this awareness. And while this pixel may have an awful time talking, the other pixels out there can say wonders. And they are within me, not me within them. When it was my awareness, I was God. And I tried mightily to make myself God. I wanted awareness to tell me good things because I kept saying only good is going on. And all of that corruption, all of those lives that are being lost, somehow I didn't mean to do that, and I was torn. It was my mind and my God who was taking care of me. But when I quit being a pixel to be the entire television set, I discovered that I was the functioning of the television set. That awareness is the functioning of mind. That this awareness is the functioning of God. And I thought to myself, well, God is taking great care of me. If I am the functioning, so what about this physical body? Awareness goes right on being aware. I remember walking out of a bunker in Korea, and the bunker went up in smoke. I had no sooner stepped out of the bunker than it was destroyed. And I looked at the bunker. And I said, my God, I could have been killed. And I dived headlong into another one. Then I looked out of that bunker to see what had happened to the first one. And that bunker went up in smoke. And I thought, my God, I could have been killed again. Then thought I correctly, awareness is going right on being aware. Awareness is who and what I am. Awareness, not Bill's awareness, but God's awareness. Now, I didn't know what to call God. Still don't. Like Lao Tzu said, well, if I must name it, I'll call it Tao. But I'd rather not name it. I don't know what to call that which is being this awareness. But that which is being this awareness is being this awareness very well. And I am its functioning. Now, when you look at the television set, you don't divide it up into parts. It either works or it doesn't. Now, if you turn the television set on and it doesn't work, it isn't a television set. It's just a bunch of tubes and resistors and nothing claiming to be a television. But if it works, the television set and its working, its functioning, are one television set. You know, another person said once upon a time, he said, when you see me, you see God. But God is greater than I am. Now, when you see the functioning of the television set, you are also seeing the television set. But the television set is greater than its functioning. Yet its functioning and the television set are one television set. Well, okay. I done told you what I was going to tell you. And then I told you. And then I told you what I done told you. And we have covered the fact that awareness, we can't get away from it. And awareness is the functioning of mind. I'm trying real hard, Rachel. Now, what happens when you stop thinking as a pixel and start thinking as the whole functioning of God? Well, number one, this is less important. And all bodies are less important than awareness. Yet every body is a legitimate and perfect point of view. Not gendered anymore. What happens when we start thinking like the television picture tube and not as a pixel? Well, dollars are included within awareness, not awareness looking out at dollars that I must have to pay my bill. The child never worries about what's for dinner. The child just goes home and eats dinner that mother has prepared. Now, this is Mother's Day. Does a lot change when you quit thinking as a pixel and start thinking as the whole picture tube? Wonders happen. Once upon a time, a young man came to me. His mother and father had just been killed. And that young man didn't know which way to turn. And I said, well, you've always been in very good hands. You've always been in God's hand. God has taken very good care of you up to this minute, or you wouldn't be here. And so that young man said, I want to try thinking like awareness. I want to be the whole screen of the television set. I'm going to let television set take care of its own functioning. I'm going to be the functioning of God. I am going to open my eyes every day and say, hello, world. There's nothing but good going on. And I'm going to see good everywhere, in everything, in every person. So that young man began to do those things. He traveled the world over doing those things. And his life went from rags to riches. He is capable now of saying all these things with conviction and with authority, knowing whereof he speaks. Right, Bruce? Right. We also find out when we start thinking as awareness, as the whole screen of awareness, that things are beholden to us, and we are not beholden to things. The home is in me. The job is in me. The things that I have had a ring through my nose pulling me around, tobacco or whiskey or something else, is beholden to me, not me to it. And we prove that to ourselves. It isn't long until we have to prove it. We have to see where dominion is. Does it lie with God, being the television set? Is God taking care of this functioning or not? And we put it to the test, and we find out that we're not beholden to drugs. We're not beholden to money. We have to be careful what we ask for, because we get it. We get our beliefs just like the child did. A young man came to me once and he said, I have the world's grandest family, but I am miserable. I said, what would you like to do, Bill? And Bill said, well, when I fly an airplane, I'm on top of the world. The world is under my feet. But when I am in the world, I am only one among 3 billion or 4 billion. I think it was 3 billion in those days. And I have to account for myself. But when I fly an airplane, I am above the world, looking down on the world. And so I said, Bill, when you were a little boy and you asked your mother and father to give you something, what did they do? And he said, they turned heaven and earth to see that I got it. And I said, well, the same is true now. If you quit thinking as a pixel and start thinking as a whole television set, as the whole screen of awareness, watch how your Father will give you what you ask for. So Bill said, I'll try it. And Bill did, his own way. We each hear our own overtone. I can't tell you what you are hearing at this minute. I can only tell you honestly what I hear. Bill started writing. Now, Bill couldn't write when he started. I remember Tom started writing, and Joseph started writing. Wes started writing. Sandy did. Sit down with a bare piece of paper, say, well, what am I going to write? Well, first of all, let me know that this blank piece of paper, the most beautiful thing on earth can be written there. It's possible. Among the infinite possibilities, quantum mechanics, among the infinite possibilities, I can write the most beautiful thing that has ever been written here. And why not? Why not? I am the function of God. So Bill and Sandy and so many right here, Wes, started writing. There's nothing to see but the quality and attributes of God. Good. And it's good. So I can write that. I'll write that. I'll write nothing but that. Good. Good. Good is where the word God came from. So, I can see nothing but good going on. That good is me. Why shouldn't I see it? It's in the very awareness I be. So I write good on a piece of paper. That word means God. That word wasn't there before I wrote it. So something had gone from the inside into the outside. And what was it? It was good. Because there's nothing else going on but good. And so it started. And so Bill is now flying an airplane all over the world. He's a captain of a big air clipper that goes all the way around the world, to Singapore and to Hong Kong and to New York and everywhere. Bill has proven that the little boy's dream is still alive. And Tom has written more books than I have. Tom has introduced this truth, this simple thing that's so simple that we can't even talk about it. So simple that we clothe it in simplicity and hide it in childlikeness and put it in the heart. And nobody will think to look for it there. You know, you knew from the very beginning God wasn't complicated. You knew that God didn't have to be so esoteric and so arcane that you had to understand metaphysics. And quantum mechanics, before God could be God, you don't have to understand any of that folderol to already be the awareness of God, the child of God, made in God's perfect image and likeness. And God takes very good care of this awareness. I remember I had my whole family in a Volkswagen going as fast as it would go. And I crossed a bridge, and a big truck was coming the other way on the bridge. And it was at night. And there wasn't enough room for the truck and the Volkswagen. And I said to myself, God, take care of this awareness. Well, the next day I went back down to that spot and I measured it. And there wasn't enough room for the truck and the Volkswagen. I could see my skid marks, but awareness went right on being aware. This awareness is eternal. Okay, what is age? You say, I'm getting older. It takes me longer to put my clothes on. It takes me longer even to put my hat on, to find it. What is time? The means by which we understand timelessness. If we didn't have time, would we know what timelessness is? Had we never been ill, would we know what wellness is? So illness is the means by which we know what wellness is. What is wealth? Well, it seems to have its opposite called poverty. But had we never had a hard time paying a bill, we wouldn't know that there is enough money to pay the bill. So our poverty is a means by which we know our wealth. Time is the means by which we know timelessness. Space is a means by which we know spacelessness. Now, all of this comes to us as glimpses and glimmers, as a little glimpse here and a little glimmer there, because we couldn't stand it if it happened all at once. This is the most beautiful life, worked out perfectly, intricately, beautifully, harmoniously, just the way it is supposed to be. A week ago, I didn't know if I could say anything. I have always arisen to the occasion. If I counted on Bill doing it, I could give up because Bill of himself can't do anything. But awareness belongs to God. And it is God's awareness here that is functioning and saying it. And I hope so you hear it. And it comes as glimpses. Hey, a glimpse. I didn't think of it that way before, but now I see it for what it is. A glimpse. A glimmer here. And a glimpse there. Here a little, there a little. Let me tell you what some of mine have been. Sometimes when I'm washing the dishes, I look out the window and I say, hello, world. It happens when I'm doing little things like that. Let me tell you another one. I was driving along and I saw a little boy on his way to school. It was the first day of school, and he was wearing a yellow slicker. It was raining, and he was standing waiting for the bus. That's all I saw. But all day long, I thought of the little boy with that look of expectancy on his face. What is school about? Why isn't Daddy here or Mommy here to help me on the bus? Why am I here all alone? We are not alone. We are never alone. Joseph, you are not alone, are you? No. Mom, my mother is here, and my father is here, closer than fingers and toes, because the only place they ever existed was within this awareness that is presently aware. Bruce, where is your mother and father this instant? And now, closer than they ever were. Closer. Before, in this time-space continuum, when we walked out of the room, John was in the other room, and we couldn't see him. Now, when we appear to go on, we are not separated. We are as much together as we have been. Here and now, the fact. And we look up, and sometimes it's a bird flying at the window, proving I'm here. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm here. Please understand, I'm here and now, complete as I've ever been. I'm here. And she is here, closer than breathing. Isn't she? Yeah. Glimpses and glimmers. Here the way the glimpses come, you might be driving a car, and you look across the way, and you see an old man and an old lady holding hands. That's it. That's it. What did you expect? A blinding road to Damascus experience that would stricken you blind, and you could stand up and say, now I know? Or did you expect to see something beautiful? The old man and the old lady holding hands. The little boy with the yellow slicker. Okay, what do we do with the glimmers when they come? You know, I still have this pile of bills I got to pay. Bill might be waxing eloquent now, but I have to leave here and go home and face that big pile of bills and those kids that are yapping, 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 or the old man or old lady that has to be tended to. So what do we do with the glimpses and the glimmers as they come? Well, once upon a time, a lady had just visited me and Rachel at Mountain Brook, at Woodton. And while she was there, she was lifted up. But when she went home, it was the old thing again. I'm back where I started from. She said, she called on the telephone and she said, oh, have you seen those terrible images on the television set? Those awful images. Children starving to death. And that lady would be here, by the way. She sends her regards to everybody, Bill. I'm talking about your mother. And I said, well, when you were here, you were lifted up because you saw a red setter bounding through the pine trees. And you said, that joy is my joy, because where do I see it? But within the awareness I be. So she was lifted up, just like the setter. That lady, that same lady, also went on a boat trip to Catalina Island. She was so depressed. And she said, but the joy I see is the joy I be. And just saying, the dolphins broke alongside her boat. And they went skipping by. And she said, that joy is my joy. Now, people, all I can do is tell you to try that. Just try it. Quit saying the stomach hurts, the heart isn't beating right, and I feel like hell. Start saying, thank you, joy, for bounding among the pine trees. Thank you, porpoises. Your joy is my joy. And watch what happens. Watch what happens. It's amazing. You talk about a miracle, it's a miracle. One day I put my head down, I couldn't move. And like was said before, I said, okay, God, I sure need you now. Where are you when I need you? Where are you when I need you? And then the most lovely lady bent down and whispered in my ear, does you know what love is? And from that instant, I was better. I don't know what love is, but I know that love is. I don't know what God is, but I know He takes care of this awareness. God said, I will give this awareness dominion, which means that the ring isn't through my nose. It doesn't lead me around whiskey or tobacco or some other passion. Rather, it lives and moves and has its being because this awareness perceives it. And I want to tell you, if I can, that science is making this discovery now. Science is finally getting on board and saying that for everything that we see, in fact, science now says that everything we see is only an image, that there is something standing behind it, being. We talked yesterday about the photon. We said that the photon comes ripping in here and it's moving at the speed of light and it's nothing but information. But the photon, which cannot be defined, it has no mass, it occupies no space, and yet it is moving at the speed of light, unchanged by anything and everything until such time as it is observed by thee and me. And what the photon says is information. Now, the photon, for every particle that we've discovered, we have discovered that it has an antiparticle, just the opposite. Now, you know, religion has been telling us for a very long time that there is a spiritual world, that spirit is here too, as well as matter. Science is agreeing. Science has found that for every quark, there is an anti-quark, just the opposite. The man who is in charge of the Fermi accelerator in Illinois is Dr. Feynman. Dr. Feynman has just written a book. Now, he's a pure scientist. He's in charge of the Fermi accelerator, which is right now the biggest in the world. It is going to have one bigger in Texas, surrounding the but right now, Dr. Fermi is in charge of the one at Fermi, and he has written a book called, you ready? The God Particle. What else could it be called? The God Particle. The last quark to be found, the heavy quark, the big one, is going to be discovered very soon. And it is the God quark. Also happening at this very minute, we have computers working on the genetic code, the double helix, the greatest of all the mysteries. It will not be long until everything will become known. It seems like we have been climbing this mountain of Dashan for a very long time. It seems also at this very moment that the things that we should have done but didn't do are also catching up to us. So on the one hand, we're climbing the peak of infinite intelligence, all wisdom, all knowledge. And on the other hand, we are approaching disaster. The world is overpopulated, to me, people. There's a hole in the ozone layer. All of our nuclear waste, we don't know what to do with it, and we just heard that the North Sea is full of it. And what's going to happen then when the food chain is destroyed? So on the one hand, it appears that we are approaching this wisdom of infinity. And on the other hand, all the things that we've done wrong in the past appear to be accumulating to destroy us. Will we become infinitely smart, or will we have our demise in a world that is falling apart with too many people and not enough to eat? Well, I am betting that awareness will go right on being aware no matter what happened to the earth. The lady who was on her way to Catalina said, "That joy is my joy." And immediately she was happy again. She went to the only telephone on the little island of Catalina and called me long distance to say, Bill, it works. It works. That joy is my joy. And a few days later, that same lady called and she said, have you seen the terrible pictures of the starving Ethiopian? She said, isn't it awful? And I said, well, now what should we do, you and me? What should you and I do right now? If somebody comes to my front door and knocks on the door and says, hey, Bill, I'm thirsty. Can you give me some water? I would go right in the kitchen and give him some water. If I see starving Ethiopians on the television set, I send a sack of potatoes. And so I said, Laurel, let's send a sack of potatoes. And she said, okay, you send one and I'll send some. And we did. And pretty soon, we turned on the television set, and everybody is sending a sack of potatoes. And those people aren't starving anymore. So we do with our glimpse and glimmer what seems sensible to do with it. But we do it. We don't theorize about it and write books about it. But we do it. We send the potatoes where it seems. So Laurel did, and she called up to tell me, oh, how joyful, how wonderful this is. And then she said, but you know, I've been reading in the paper that these little groups here and there who are collecting material to send to the starving people of Africa, that they are not honest. Well, does that make any difference here as I? No. We just give. Now, that brings me to the equation. I didn't talk about the equation before because I thought it was too silly and too childish. And people would come to me and say, I can't live like a child. I can't stand up naked in front of my friend like a child and say, oh, because it seems too Pollyanna, too much like foolishness. And I would use the analogy, well, suppose right now in the midst of us, a little girl